Hello, and welcome to Michigan Justice Advocacy's January 21st volunteer training for legislative visits. We're glad you can join us today. Here's a brief look at the topics that we'll be covering in today's session. And here's a list of contacts if you'd like to reach out to anyone at Michigan Justice Advocacy. And now let's join the training, which is already underway.
Oh, got it.
I forgot to click that button. It's now clicked. Thanks for the reminder.
Very good. So yes, we are recording this meeting, and we'll make that available as well for the YouTube channel. First, let's talk about what happened last year. There were several bills introduced, and late in the game, we had the same version of the Good Time bill that was introduced in the Senate, introduced in the House. That's the first time that an identical bill was introduced in both chambers, so that's significant. And here are the total number of lawmakers that supported those bills. Notice there was some overlap. Those that supported us at the tail end of 2022 also had signed up to another bill led by Kyra Harris Bolden, 4489. Our lead sponsor for the work that we had done here at the end of last year was Rep. Amos O'Neill, and him and several of his colleagues signed House Bill 6567 and 6568 and introduced it. So we expect this list will be a good guide for us when we are setting up meetings, but also it's the people who aren't on this list, the lawmakers that we still want to reach, that's where the work is. We really need more than just the slim Democratic majority that runs the House and the Senate this year and next year. We really need more than just that slim majority. We really need to win over some Republican lawmakers as well. So I'll pause if there's any questions. I think we have a small enough group, right? We can probably take questions as we go.
Yes. And I would also like to just give the context of right now going into 2023, there was a lot of newly elected individuals. We actually have 57 newly elected representatives and senators. So not only is it we want to cultivate relationships with Republicans, but we also want to cultivate relationships with new lawmakers to be the first people in front of them to discuss this topic, or if they're familiar with this topic, really be the face that they put with this particular piece of legislation, so that if they have questions or they want clarification, they know to reach out to us. We've already engaged them. They know we are the experts on good time.
Exactly. All right, let's move into, how to just conduct ourselves when we're up there in Lansing, and some good tips and guidelines on how what we should be doing. First, this is a typical place we like to meet. This map will go out. Again, you'll probably see it over and over again so that people know where we meet. Across from the House of Representatives office building, that's called the Anderson Building. There is a Big B Coffee. It's a nice small shop. We can get started in the mornings there when we meet. And we'll continue to meet there, I think, for the time being. There's a parking deck right down the road if you wanted to find parking, or I believe there's probably on-street parking, but I prefer this deck here. It's easy to walk from there over to the House building. When we go to the Senate, that's all the way across diagonal across the Capitol steps over into this neighborhood down in the bottom left of this map. But typically we'll start here, and that is where all of our representatives for this House of Representatives here in Michigan.
There are a few in the Capitol building, though, if they're lucky.
Oh, yes. Some of the leadership actually have offices in the Capitol. So look carefully when we provide that final list of, hey, here's who's going and here's who we're meeting with. Some of those meetings, even if it's a representative, may not be in the Anderson building. They may be in the Capitol. So look carefully at the information we provide. And hopefully we do a good job of really ironing it out so you know exactly where you have to go. But I think Mariah's point is that there are also lawmakers' offices for leadership lawmakers in the Capitol building itself. Good point. All right. What we ask is that you be prompt, right? When we get to Lansing. I usually give myself about 20 minutes before the first meeting when we all arrive at the Big B coffee shop, and make sure you dress appropriately. We want to impress these lawmakers that we're not that we're respectful of their position. And I think maybe business casual is a good choice. Or if we have some MJA shirts, we'll be happy to provide them. I mean, maybe I don't have to say these things, but when we're meeting with folks, it's good to turn off all distractions like cell phones and other devices that might take your attention away from the meeting at hand. This next bullet point, I think, was more appropriate when there was the height of COVID. We were very respectful, and if lawmakers wanted us to wear masks, or if that was the expectation, I think this might be less of an issue now, but we still want to be mindful if a particular lawmaker and all his staff or her staff are wearing masks, we probably should ask, hey, would you like us to wear a mask, and then respect that. Each meeting will only have a handful of people, one of which would be an MJA person, and then 3 or 4 others that would join us. They would be scheduled in advance, and Jessica, our vice president, does a great job of reaching out, lining these things up. So we want to make sure we're there on time and a little bit early at their office if possible. So they know we're coming. They may even ask us for a list of who's coming, like names. So these things are pretty well orchestrated. And go ahead.
To go with that, the reason they're asking for names is oftentimes they want to know if people are constituents who are voters in their district. And so as we arrange meetings, it is always great for us to know that we can match you with your representative if schedules work. And it oftentimes can even help us get meetings. They occasionally will rebuff us if we ask and we don't have anyone who lives in their district. So being able to match people together with their representatives or senators can be very helpful for opening the door.
Right. Yeah, it really does depend on the personality of that lawmaker we're going to meet. Some are more politically motivated, and therefore they want to know, hey, if somebody's in the room here and I am their duly elected representative, I'm liable to pay or likely to pay more attention to that meeting. But I have had those awkward situations where a bunch of us walk into a room, the lawmaker will ask, oh, so who lives in our district? And the answer was nobody. So it is nice if we can figure out who is in which district, and then, like Mariah said, match those meetings up. We'll do as much as we can in that direction. We do want to stay on topic, and we're going to be talking about this more so in the next section of the training. But what we're there for is to talk about the Good Time Bill. That's what MJA is all about. That's what we've been pushing. And so therefore, we want to stay on topic and try not to veer off. Like I said, we'll talk more about what we want to say and what we want to avoid saying. And we really do recognize that each case is so unique. There's so much to talk about with regard to maybe individuals, but we're going to try and stay on those topics and send a clear message to those lawmakers regarding what we want them to do about the good time policy. Okay. I'll talk through this, but I think at some point I'm going to turn this over. I don't want to step on toes. Mariah or Mary, are you the ones doing this section, or shall I continue?
I can do this part. I know Mary's going to help us when we get into the next section. So typically our meetings are scheduled for about 30 minutes. That's literally from when we walk into the door until they're shaking our hand and ushering out the door. So realistically, it's a quick introduction for everyone in the room, kind of explaining. We often, if we know ahead of time, a few days, we'll try and make sure you at least have some details about the lawmaker that you're visiting. Even a cursory glance at someone's Wikipedia or Ballotpedia page can be helpful to be like, oh, they went to Central Michigan. I went to Central Michigan. Finding those little connections are always helpful. Then we will get into kind of an overview of good time and the reason. We're soliciting support for House introduction. We're asking them to co-sponsor in the Senate, that type of very direct, here's what we're looking for. Oftentimes the MJA staff will kind of lead that piece, or board member. And then we have about 10, maybe 15 minutes to really talk about personal stories. And so this time around, as we go into these meetings, we've talked about in the past having a written letter or story, write it out ahead of time, what you want to share and talk about. This time we're going to talk about another option, which is kind of giving the resume of your loved one, explaining who your loved one was as a member of society. What is their skills and strengths, and how are we as a society lacking because they are not here with us, providing either a workforce or a support at home or that type of thing. And we'll get a little more into what we're kind of talking about there. But again, with 3 people in the room, if these are very long stories, we quickly run out of time, unfortunately. And then we always want to do kind of a wrap up, understanding, get their feedback. Are they willing to help us co-sponsor? And if not, what are their reasons for hesitation? What are the information that they need to feel comfortable to co-sponsor and vote in an affirmative for this type of legislation? And then if there are specific questions, it's always good to take those notes, write them down, get them to us. We often follow up with the lawmakers right afterwards with an email and provide anything that they may have asked for. They may ask for certain data, facts, where did we get our research? And then quickly ushered out the door.
Yeah.
I will give the note that unfortunately, sometimes these meetings, we schedule them with the lawmaker and a session may run long, votes or hearings may be going on that run into our meetings, and we may end up with one of their staff members. While we always love to talk to the lawmakers, the staff people can oftentimes be a really good bridge and for us to develop relationships. Staff members are oftentimes experts in certain fields. So if you're able to educate them and they're able to answer the questions for the lawmaker, that's great. On top of that, many staff members have worked in various offices. So they may be familiar with other lawmakers and be able to give us information that we don't know, give us some insider information that can be really helpful. So even if for some reason schedule mishaps happen and we're just with a staff member, that's not a bad thing in any way. We love talking with staff members.
Amen. If I could add to the idea of a note taker, if somebody is really skilled at listening and is a good detail-oriented person, if they rise up, if they're in our group, that is, and they rise up and say, hey, Jack, I'll take notes, I would really appreciate it, because I get into the moment of the discussion and oftentimes I'll end up missing something subtle where later on somebody else who was listening would tell me, hey, this person has an objection. They didn't quite say it that way or so loudly, but I wrote this down and I want to bring it to your attention. I would really appreciate that, because what we're looking to do is really build a relationship and understand these people as best we can as individuals. So if you hear something, you're a good note taker. If you're just playing the role of a listener, please, please, please help us by writing down those details or making mental notes of them and catching them later. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
All right. This is where I'm going to turn things over to Mariah and Mary for some insider tips and strategies for a successful meeting and good ways to tell your stories. So first, the reason we're doing this is we want the lawmakers to hear from their constituents. And we're thinking about this. We think preparation is the key to this. So that's why we're going to talk about a resume of your loved one. And what the focus should be is, we can't change the fact that they're in prison, right? That whole process occurred. They were, arrested, charged, sentenced, and now you find your loved one is in prison. So what we want to do is focus on how have they been doing since they've been incarcerated. And with that, shall I turn it over to Mary? Is it?
Mary and Mariah, depending on what the next slide is.
Let's see what it is. How's this?
Okay, Mariah, were you covering this part, or did you want me to?
You can grab this one.
Okay. So, what the focus we want to do with this particular these site visits is to focus on why it's important for your incarcerated loved one to be back in society. And one of the focuses would be, what could they contribute? Because we know right now Michigan has an employment gap in a lot of areas. And so one of the focuses would be, why would it be important to return them to the workforce? What would they be contributing to your community, to the family, to bring back income, to Michigan's economy? So what we want everyone to do is to prepare, and Mariah will talk about either the story, a personal story, or a resume. So we like the idea of a resume this time as an option, because it shows a lawmaker, and we can leave it behind, and it shows them, here's the skill set that's being wasted by somebody who is incarcerated, and if eligible for good time, early release due to good time, would be contributing back to society. So a resume that shows what they were doing before they were incarcerated, and then also adding any opportunities they've had for employment or additional training while incarcerated. And these can be redacted. You don't have to put the name, but to show the true background of a person who is currently incarcerated, to show what a waste it is that they aren't actually out contributing to society, is kind of the goal. I think we covered that. And then, Mariah, what's that link for?
Yeah, so for those of you who maybe feel like a resume is hard to describe, maybe for some reason your loved one didn't have a lot of work experience, they were young when they entered the system. We had our letter writing webinar last year that is on our YouTube channel, and it's under the MJA page. But this is an opportunity for maybe if you don't really quite have a resume, but you want to write the story. And so what a letter allows us to do is, again, leave it with the lawmakers, let them take the time to read it later. They're busy. They're not always processing everything in the moment, but being able to physically leave them a piece of paper that tells your loved one's story about why you, as their loved one, want them to return home, why this person, and really paint a picture of them as a individual human, not just someone, a cog in the machine, but someone who can contribute it, not just even in an employment factor, but as a member of your family, as a member of your community, as a member of society. What are we missing because this person is not there? So take time to watch that on YouTube if you're interested, if you feel like the resume isn't a good fit for your particular loved one. But we do want to have something written ahead of time. A few reasons for that. One, like we've said a couple of times, we can leave these with lawmakers, but two, it also allows you to collect and lay out your thoughts in a concise manner. So in the moment, it doesn't, a lawmaker may ask a question, it may throw you off, and that way we're not getting sidetracked or derailed by some small thing along the way. Because let's be real, there are times when that happens, and we know we have a very short window to have this conversation. So having it written down allows you to think through those questions that might pop up, the thoughts that you may have, and how do we want to tell the story of your loved one in the best light.
Yeah, I'm going to make a plug for the person who ran that letter writing webinar. She's a wonderful volunteer of ours, Mary Steibel. And she, I believe, was a primary school or is a primary school educator in English. So
Correct.
she focuses on, good grammar, proper sentence construction, concise thoughts and organization of thoughts into paragraphs. I really enjoyed the session. And if you get a chance, please. Also, our own Mary Cusack on the line today is from the world of higher education too. So that's why she's helping lead this section.
Yeah, and I'd always be willing to help review someone's letter and suggest edits. And I don't know, I haven't watched that one, I'll admit it yet. But Mariah, do you know offhand how long she says to keep, or how brief to keep it? A page or two?
1 to 2 pages. Yep, 1 to 2 pages. So which, same thing like a resume. So we have an example resume here. Obviously the information isn't for a specific person. And as Jack mentioned, You don't have to put your loved one's name. You don't have to put the facility they're at or their individual number. Those are things that you can choose not to have, or with conversations with your loved one. If that is, they want the lawmaker to know who they are and actually be able to know them, you can have that. But in this case, this individual is a truck driver. They had a career in that. They were working on that for 10 years. They had a job with 2 different employers. They had started working at Mott Community College on a degree and completed some credits. They had a certificate and other things, and ran into trouble and have been incarcerated for a period of time. And that's where we get into the part where let's highlight what the things that they have chosen to do to continue to remain on the right track. If your loved one is comfortable and you're comfortable, we think it would be beneficial for you to be able to say, yeah, they had 2 class 1 misconducts thus far in the last 9 years of their sentence, to really highlight that the majority of the time they are doing the right things, making the right choices, and they are eligible for good time. And it's not like we give it to everyone all the time. If someone has made a mistake, those 2 months, they don't receive their good time, but the rest of the time they have been doing what we hope to have someone do. This is just an example of some things that someone could participate in and have done. Obviously, your loved one, and we've seen these resumes and stories come in from lots of our incarcerated followers, whether through the JPay or the letters we've received in our mailbox. They can have a whole page worth of accomplishments that they have done while they are incarcerated. And we really want to highlight, like, these individuals are not just sitting doing nothing with their days. They are actively choosing to better themselves and the community that they're in. And if given the opportunity, they would be doing the same thing here with us as our neighbors and
Yeah,
and see if anyone has questions about any of this, because that's quite a bit of information we talked about.
Yeah, in my view, this is the opportunity for you to show how your loved one has been working on their own rehabilitation, right? They have taken that advantage of the fact.
I'm in the middle of this meeting.
Sorry, has somebody got a question?
She's just want to know what's happening.
So the point, though, is we want to show that people have learned, they're working on their betterment, and therefore the idea of going into the corrections facility is working. They've learned from their mistakes. They're being corrected, as the Department of Corrections wants, right? So why keep people in longer than that? What's the point? They've demonstrated that they're learning, and that's the whole point of good time. Demonstrate that to the leadership, get them in front of the parole board sooner, and let's get them back out and get them home, get them working in society again, get them contributing to their families and supporting their loved ones. So any questions? So I believe we may have stated it, but I'll do it again just in case. Before we go up there with some volunteers, we would like the volunteers to have gone through this kind of training and actually done this homework. And we would like to take the time to review these resumes and say, yes, this is good, or no, let's alter this. Or like Mary said, she would be happy to review and help edit, because we really do want to send the right message. We're trying to avoid anything that gets into the weeds of, well, you know, the prosecutor who put my loved one in prison was a liar. And so we want to avoid the whole situation that brought them into prison to begin with. We could review that till we're blue in the face, and the lawmaker isn't going to be able to do anything about that. But the lawmakers can change the laws now that they're in prison. What policies can be put into place? What laws can be put into place? Good time can be put into place. And that's the emphasis. We really want to drive home the point that, okay, they're in prison, but these people could be contributing members of society. Let's get them back home sooner than the long sentences that they're getting. Let's stop wasting taxpayer dollars. Let's do the right thing. Let's be smart on crime, not just tough on crime. Questions out there?
haven't seen anyone raise their hands yet, but I do want to highlight also, because we have a number of individuals who you now have your loved one home and you're still very passionate, or you yourself are home. And it would be awesome to also see your resume. Now that you've returned, you have insurmountable obstacles in your way, but you are still trying to do the right thing and making progress. And what have you done now since you've returned home that we should highlight, that we could say that, yeah, having you back is for the better of society, and really allow you to highlight that too.
Yeah. One key example, Mariah, it's in the news, right, is Peter Martell, who was a formerly incarcerated individual, rose up, got himself a law degree, and went on to build a career where he ended up in the Michigan Supreme Court as a clerk working for Kyra Harris Bolden. And I don't know if everybody has followed this story in the news, but a fellow judge called him out about the record that he had. And this highlights the fact that it's very difficult for people to return. I think that's a fair point to be making as well. Folks have paid their dues. They're trying to come home and succeed and pick up where they left off. I'm not afraid to tell that part of the story too. So if you're in that camp, raise your hand. Let's talk.
And also with that, like, I've seen a lot of Marvin Cotton the past week. He's doing his book tour, and we understand not everyone is a Marvin Cotton with a book tour on the New York Times bestseller list. That's okay. You are still doing amazing things. And so we want to acknowledge those and talk about that not everyone's a superstar. A lot of people just come home, get their job, and keep their head down and continue on the path that they were before. And so we just want to acknowledge that.
Okay. Is there any more to the presentation material? Let's see. I don't think so.
I don't believe so. I think we're pretty straightforward. I will highlight for everyone right now, just as we go into this date, obviously is quite a few weeks ahead and out from when our legislative visits in February will be. We have started scheduling. We're starting to get the dates and times, but as Jack said, Jessica is still working on that. And there's often a lot of phone call tag or email tag that goes back and forth to find these times and dates. So as we get closer, we will give people more information and updates. On February 4th, we're going to be going over the same set of material with other people, because lots of other people registered to come. And so you don't need to attend on February 4th if you are here today, but we will give everybody a time and a date when we get closer, probably the week of February 13th. So either the Monday, Tuesday, we'll do a quick half-hour meeting in the afternoon just to discuss, okay, here are the actual dates and times. When are you available in the next few days scheduled? Because we know it's going to be a little bit all over the place, and we don't have it locked in for a little bit.
I see Donna has raised her hand. Donna, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted you or Mariah to clarify where our bill is. I am also monitoring the groups right now, and everyone seems to think that the bill hasn't been introduced yet. That is something that we are going to do versus it's already.
Well, that's true. That's true, because the legislative sessions run in 2-year chunks. The last legislative session ended in December of 2022. So we're starting over again. We have to start over again. Our bill has not been introduced yet in this new legislative session.
But thankfully, we're not starting from scratch. The language is not going to be changing. So it is the exact same language that we had introduced last year. And we already have our lead sponsors in place, and they've already requested it. So once we've had these meetings with the new lawmakers and taken time to educate them and to circle back with those lawmakers that we've talked about previously, especially the representatives who didn't have much opportunity last year to sign up, we're going to go back to those representatives and say, hey, now's the time. You promised us last year that you'd be interested and supportive. Let's get you on board. So right now we are aiming for like a late March, April introduction. We don't necessarily have a date locked in, only because the whims of the lawmakers are hard to know what date it'll exactly happen, but that is our goal right now. And so we will keep everyone updated. When our newsletter goes out on a weekly basis, we put the most updated information in that newsletter, and we will post on our Facebook page. When the bill gets introduced, we will also be sending a JPay update to let everybody know that's happened. We will tell you guys when that has happened.
So right now we have sponsors and it will be formally introduced.
Yeah, in that late March, early April timeframe. So again, if people are asking right now, we do not have a bill number for this session. It is a new one. We'll have new numbers. But I know there's lots of rumors, lots of talk that goes around. If it has not come from us in our newsletter with a specific number and we tell you, it has not happened yet.
Okay, there's a bill out there that's HB 6567, which is being referenced.
That's
And it's
last year's bill.
Yeah, that's last year's, Donna. I can go back to that page and show you. But basically, all these bills, every bill that's on this page, notice the title of this slide is the 2021-2022 legislative session. So these bills were all introduced in that session. But once that session is over, and if these bills didn't get a vote, they're dead. They're gone. They're off the table, and you start over again every 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but that's how it works. Or else, every new session would have to deal with ages old bills if they didn't get disposed of previously. So they just clear the docket. They start over again. Every 2 years, new bills get introduced. It's not unusual for a bill to be introduced in a session. It doesn't go anywhere. The next session, it gets introduced again. You keep trying. You keep knocking on the door.
Hi, it's Mark. I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, Mark.
Hello. Sorry, I joined late, so I might have missed a little something at the very beginning. But my son is in prison, and he got in there very young. He's still very young. So he doesn't have much of a resume. There wouldn't be much material for that. But my argument or discussions with friends and family and others has been that, he's got so much potential because he's still so very young, but he's not being able to take advantage of any training or skills development or, there's no incentive really for him. And I mean, in my mind, the time for good behavior has got a lot of pluses. When I talk to people about it, they're not aware of any of those issues. It's sort of a lot of people don't think about the criminal justice system if they don't have to.
Yes.
And
true.
So a couple questions. I'm wondering if, even though we don't have a new bill number yet, if it would be helpful if people wrote a letter to their state legislators, saying that they would support, this idea or this, the concept. Now I don't know them by heart yet. I want to sort of make a little cheat sheet for myself, but the numbers as far as finances and the percentage of state gross domestic product and that is spent on, incarceration. And it just blows me away that Michigan sort of is.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not anywhere near leading the, pack. We're way back there. And so there'd be advantages for taxpayers. There'd be advantages for society. And if we get some people rehabilitated and, back out being productive members of society versus somebody that we're paying for, room and board for, basically, plus medical and, supervision, et cetera.
Hey, Mark, it's
Um,
Mary. How old's your son?
He just turned 21.
Okay. So, one of the things that your story could focus on is that untapped potential, right? That as long as he's behaving and can get out, he's so young that he could easily be getting back into, he could go to college or a training program and be entering the workforce and have his whole life ahead of him. And at 21, he may be Pell eligible, he may be, eligible for some of the other state training programs, so the focus is here you've got an able-bodied person who could be part of the workforce. I think that's the important part of focusing that story, the untapped potential of somebody that age.
What,
So I think you want to do a letter. You would want to do a letter to have with a little bit of his story and that talk about that potential. And
So
talk
it
about
would be-
what he's good at, what his interests are, what his skill set is.
So it would be helpful to have a little synopsis letter of his
Yep.
situation. And then I might have missed this also, but when you go to Lansing, do you want people like me that have family members in prison to go and, just be there as far as a body or be supportive?
yeah,
Or,
absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, I wanted to
idea
ask
is-
you, I know a couple state legislators. I went to high school with one, and we used to be close years ago, but and I'm wondering, do personal relationships would that help? Because I was going to just write him.
Absolutely.
I was going to write him a letter, just personal, me to him.
Yes.
But I didn't know about going to Lansing. My own representative, I don't know him at all, but he got elected here locally. So I
Yeah,
thought,
any
well,
connections help. And I think when you go to volunteer to go to visits, if you have a connection in particular, throw that in the email or whatever, and let us know, because that does help. And that brings up something else I wanted to mention earlier. When people go to legislators' offices, I'll be the first to admit that I will look around and see if there's some connection I have. And one person we met with last year, went to Central Michigan. So, I went to Central so I could say, hey, fire up chips and, break the ice with a little bit of talk that we had that
Sure,
one thing in
sure.
common. So things like that are really helpful. The other thing would be to do if you are scheduled to go on one of the legislative visits, is to go read up, particularly on the legislator's own website. They usually have press releases. See what kind of work they've been up to, like what committees they're serving on, what other kinds of legislation they have supported, events they've been to, so that you can say, hey, I see that you are co-sponsoring this bill. I really appreciate that, because that's important to me too. So any connection that will make that meeting memorable, because the person feels like that you appreciate the work they're doing and understand, and then making a personal connection. Anything that makes our visits stand out is helpful.
I will add to that, Mark, that I do want that personal story to be told, because I want the lawmakers to understand the laws that they write are impacting real people. And I want them to meet the real people that are being impacted by the decisions that they're making, so that they understand the human element of this, right? We could give them all the facts and figures. We can tell them about all the statistics, but it's not going to sway somebody's heart necessarily. So the personal connection, I think, is very important.
Sure. And is it helpful if a person such as myself just shows up in Lansing or makes an appointment to go see their legislator, or would it be, as an individual myself, or would it be better to go as part of a group such as MJA?
I think the more of a relationship you can form with the guy that you helped either put into office or you hold the power to vote them back out of office, I think that relationship should be developed no matter. If you have time to go there on your own and grow that, if it's just phone calls. I'm surprised, frankly, how easy it is to meet with our legislators. It's not that hard. You just, make an appointment, write them letters, pick up the phone and give their offices a call, and they start to know you by name. There would be nothing better than that in my mind.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I emailed MJA several months ago and I never got a response. And I just, I figured, well, you're busy and there's volunteers. But what is the best way to contact you or the office or whatever, if I had a question on a specific?
We have the individual emails that are going to be there. I think that's part of the slides. And Mariah, are we going to make this available? The slide deck here with these.
Yes, it's recorded. We'll post it. It missed the first few minutes, but that's okay.
Okay. So these are the email addresses. That's probably a better connection than just the generic contact@mijustice.org, because that is less monitored than an individual email would be. I will look occasionally at the contacts to figure out if there's something I need to respond to. But if you wrote me directly, that's probably a better way to get my attention. You're also welcome to have my cell phone number. I cherish these kinds of relationships because I want to be able to tell your story if you're not there with me.
Sure. Well, I'm looking at the MJA team. So there's emails right there. I'll start there if I need to contact you.
Sounds great. Absolutely.
So the training February 4th, is that going to be similar to what this is today?
Yes. Yes. And it'll be closer to the dates of when do we have legislative visits scheduled. Right now, we're looking at that, I think the week of the 13th, February 13th. Is that the week that Jessica is working on for us, Mariah?
I believe so.
And if you're going to go there, Mark, rather than just one visit, I would suggest that you, if you can find the time, block out the day. And if there's several visits that we can go on, we try and maximize our time there because it's an hour away for me. I'm in Ann Arbor. But if I drive up there, I want to meet with people and make the most of the day. So.
Sure. Hey, could I ask a couple general questions?
Yeah, please.
Given the fact that the Michigan legislator, the Senate, the House, and the governor's office are all Democratic now, is that good? Does that portray like a better chance for a bill to get through? Or I assume he's still going to want co-sponsors from both parties, but I didn't know if it had been held up before due to political party differences.
You can see the number of Democrats that are on this page. We don't have much trouble convincing the Democrats that they want to sign up for this kind of policy. They only have a slim majority, though. I think it's 1 or 2 votes, right, that would give them the majority. So we absolutely need Republicans on this, on a sheet like this. We need to have more Republicans sign up, because not all Democrats necessarily are going to agree with the policy either. Just because you have a D next to your name doesn't mean it's automatic, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are benefits that both parties could acquiesce to if they were aware of them. And, if we explain it to them and we build relationships and we, get some momentum going.
But I do believe this is going to be won by the voice of the people. It needs to be loud and increase in volume and spread in numbers so that the lawmakers, because they're politicians, they're going to yield to, well, what is it that these constituents want? And they keep asking for, and they keep asking for in greater numbers. I really do believe that's how this thing is going to get tipped over.
Well, it takes time. As I've talked to people, they initially don't care, or well, say, oh, it depends on what crime they committed or what. But then when you talk to them about the financial impact to the state, and you give them specifics like about my son or other people I know, and then they're like, oh, I never thought of that. And a lot of it's just education of the electorate. So
Yeah.
that's why I want to put together some kind of a simple digestible fact sheet or something that I can share with people, because I think a lot of them would sign a letter to their legislator, if asked, and it was explained to them why it's important. But so many people are just not aware of the issue at all, or don't care about it because it doesn't affect their life at this point that they know of.
We have some, I think, helpful material that we can send. And with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to close out this session. This was being recorded, or is being recorded, so we will put it up on the website and a link to it. Mariah, any closing comments, or Mary, any closing comments before we adjourn?
We'll just be sending an email update as we get closer to schedule that touch base before the actual meetings, once we have meetings confirmed, dates and times, so that we can actually figure out if you're available that day and time, or if not, when we can schedule you to join us for later dates. So that will be, again, early in the week of the February 13th. We'll do a quick touch base then, and ideally you'll have your homework done by then, so you have a few weeks to work on your loved one's resume or story, and be ready for us to share that with lawmakers when we go and visit.
Great.
And
Well,
you
thank
can
you,
give people an
everybody.
address to email those attachments to.
Probably one of you two, I would suggest.
Yeah, pick a point of contact. Either way.
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful, and we look forward to meeting you guys in person, or ladies in person, when we're up in Lansing together.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Have a good day.